Sports build champions and leaders, but every champion has moments of struggle, pressure, anxiety, burnout, and those moments deserve real support. PAX Health is proud to sponsor the New Jersey Lacrosse podcast because they believe mental health care should be available when you need it, as you need it. Therapy and psychiatric services for kids, teens, communities, and families. Telehealth and in-person appointments are available within 48 hours. PAX Health, people helping people. Visit pax.health. That's PAX.health. Lacrosse families, meet Orgo, the calendar app that actually thinks like a sports parent. Orgo syncs with team apps you already use and enriches schedules with real-world logistics. Every event shows travel times, early arrival buffers, carpool assignments, conflict alerts, and time-specific weather so you know what gear to pack. Get your athletes on it too. Orgo teaches time literacy, an executive skill for life. One subscription, whole family. Code LAX25 is 25% off. Just $44 locks in sanity for the whole year. Visit www.orgohq.com. That's www.orgohq.com. JAG Physical Therapy, providing rehabilitative recovery from sports and soft tissue injuries to knee, foot, ankle, hip, shoulder, elbow, and back injuries. Schedule your appointment with JAG Physical Therapy today and meet their experienced team of physical therapists, occupational therapists, athletic trainers, and exercise physiologists invested in your full recovery. Get back the life you love at JAG Physical Therapy, the most awarded physical therapy provider in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, just visit jagpt.com. That's JAGPT.com. This is the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Glock.
I'm Bill Farr.
I'm Anthony Terranova.
And this here is Gil Swenson. Welcome to the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another overtime edition of the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast. I am Keith Glock, and today we are hosting the South Jersey Lacrosse Summit, as I am calling it. And in thinking about wanting to highlight South Jersey lacrosse and the strength and where we've been and where we have come, where we are now, and maybe a little bit of a look into the future, I said, who would be the best people to do this? And the first three people that I could think of were the head coaches from Shawnee, Haddonfield, and St. Augs, respectively, Don Green, Damon Legato, and JC Valore. Boys, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Coach Legato, I want to start with you because, for those the kids out there, you've been at Haddonfield for a number of years at this point. So, folks that don't love to necessarily do their research may not be as familiar with just how far back your coaching career in South Jersey goes. And that extends all the way back more than a quarter of a century now, old man, to Moorestown. And when you took over in 2000, fresh out of college, you were a pup and ended up guiding Moorestown to a Tournament of Champions crown in 2001. Still by far geographically the farthest south a Tournament of Champions winner has ever been. And I was trying to look at it on a map. Outside of that Moorestown team that you had, Coach, I think Bridgewater is the farthest school geographically south to win a TOC or Kirst Cup title. And you were able to do it 25 years ago. Just as you think about the evolution of how things were back then, as both a player at Moorestown and then coaching at Moorestown, and we'll get JC's kind of perspective on it as a South Jersey player at Moorestown as well. But Damon, from your perspective, what was it like? Take us in the time machine to where we were then and where we are now.
Lacrosse back then was, when you compare players to now, players now are just unbelievably talented. So the amount of growth we've had over the past 26 years now that I've been in the game is really cool to see. Being from South Jersey, when I played, nobody knew about Moorestown. When you'd go to try out for Garden State games or anything for that matter, people didn't know Moorestown at all. And sometimes would just dismiss you because you were from Moorestown. So just looking at that, the game has changed a ton. In just the respect that there's a lot of good lacrosse in South Jersey now, really good lacrosse. And going back to 2000, I was right out of college, and I'd say I was IQ wise very, very low as a coach. We focused a lot on effort, a lot on just being able to beat our guys one-on-one. And back then the triangle offense was a new thing, so it's come a long way since then. Coaching the guys back then, I think they were 4 years and 5 years younger than me, which is funny to think about. We're coming up on the 25th anniversary of that, and they're going to celebrate it at Moorestown this year. So I've been kind of seeing some of the guys around, and it's funny because their kids aren't much younger than mine, and they're right around the same age. So it was such a cool experience. But I do think, going back to how our coach coached us, and I don't know, JC, you could probably attest to this. Our coach was a very blue collar, hard worker, loved to do the fundamentals and the basics, and I don't think that kind of stuff has changed much. The fundamentals from when I played back in high school to when I coached in 2000 are relatively the same, and this year, talking to our players about it all starts with effort, attitude, just the fundamentals of competing. So I think that while the game has really, really developed and the talent is through the roof right now, it's so fun to watch these kids play. It's the core of it really kind of remains the same.
JC, and obviously, you're referencing legendary Val Curran, who was coach at Moorestown, and JC, as a player, you take us back to your recollections of being a Moorestown player in the late '90s, and then obviously you also went on to play lacrosse at Delaware. So take us through that, being a kid from Moorestown.
Yeah, well said, Dame. I think one of the things that I was fortunate enough probably that Damon didn't have, he kind of helped build. I was there a little bit for growth mode, where we're kind of growing into a program that was a little bit more recognized, probably 65 teams in the state, and the playoffs look differently. And but those standards that he talks about, everything on the fundamental and foundational end of a program that Val instilled and installed, were very much there. I can remember, he probably does too. There were games we'd play Mountain Lakes and ride the entire bus ride with our pads on. So you're kind of rolling out right for the game to start, and you're trying to figure out why. And a lot of it was about discipline and how discipline's going to unlock a lot of things in life. And I think a lot of those early components of what it's like to build that are things that, I carried along with my dad being a, 60-year coach now, 65-year coach. I think, as a whole, what we took out of that program, hopefully Damon knows, and maybe he doesn't, I kind of looked up to him. And a lot of the guys, I think, below us continue to do that. And if you can have that path of growth and really good town teams do, that turn into really good public school teams, you're going to have a good recipe and good formula. So it was awesome. Of course, just like Dame said, a little bit different. I would say my group was dedicated, devoted, and skilled, but nothing like these guys that I'm in front of every single day these days. So, it's just a different game at that time, but really cool to be part of that build, and excited for that '01 group to get honored, Dame's group to get honored. I think it's next month or next week.
Yeah, next month. Yep.
Okay. All right, cool. So all good stuff. And I think at that point, probably one team, in 94 to 98 in South Jersey, maybe two max. By the time I graduated school at Delaware, maybe '03, when I first started entering St. Augustine, up to about 18 to 20. Now we're sitting at 42 in the South Jersey chapter. So really good growth for an area that out of the 7 counties, 5 of them are in the lowest population density of the 21 in the state. And that's you need humans to make it work. And I think a lot of good programs have grown from just really showcasing what we have and allowing guys to get invested in lacrosse at an earlier age, which has been good for South Jersey.
And just before I get to move over to Coach Green, what was the closest school that you guys would play when you would travel north? Lawrenceville?
West Windsor, maybe?
Petty, maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
But
that just
for
goes
years,
to show you.
Before JC, we were not a high school sanctioned team, so we played the Interact and then any private schools in Jersey. So those guys were probably the closest. Yeah.
So, Coach Green, you have a perspective, whereas Coach Legato, Coach Valore grew up in Moorestown, have stayed in South Jersey in their coaching careers. You grew up in New York State, played in Rochester at Nazareth, and had the opportunity to coach at a couple of different places, Montgomery, Robbinsville, before now kind of calling South Jersey home, it seems, for the next foreseeable while. And so bringing a perspective of not traditionally a South Jersey guy, but now building what is turning into one of the powerhouse public schools, not only in South Jersey, but in the state. What is it like having the perspective of having grown up in a completely different place and seeing how things were done there, the level of play, how you kind of strive to bring certain aspects of the game as you are now, in Shawnee?
Yeah, I grew up in the Westchester County area of the Hudson Valley. And, we would play a lot of the Connecticut teams, the upstate teams, Long Island teams. And there was a tradition-rich environment. And, you could see and learn from everything. Like the level of lacrosse and intelligence of lacrosse was just amazing. As, I joined coaching ranks, I was in tri-state lacrosse coaching there and got to coach kids from all over the state, every single town. And I would continuously look at the kids from South Jersey and go, oh my God, they're so athletic. Probably just a little bit behind on the skill and the knowledge of the game. But I was like, if somebody could go down and help grow the game down in that area, these guys could be dominant. I think as time went on, I migrated further south and further south. And when I had the opportunity to coach at Shawnee, I jumped all over it. Having coached so many kids from Shawnee who were just so athletic and talented and just great kids as well. I went down there and was like, I think this could be the place that we can build. And I grew up next to like the Yorktown Heights program, that put out so many amazing college players and, just lacrosse players in general. And that's always been my dream, is to build something like that. And it seemed that Shawnee was the perfect home to do that. But also it's like, what everybody's been saying is even since I was at Shawnee, but, coaching players from back in the day, players in South Jersey are just getting better and better and better. And, they still have that same athleticism and grit that they've always had. So I think that there's a tremendous future down here. And for the guys who have been down here for a long time, it's a testament to you guys. I was in the Moorestown program for a year as a freshman coach. That was like my high school job. And just having that tradition, rub off on me and be able to see that tradition that a South Jersey program had, it was amazing. And it was something that I've kept with me, forever.
I forgot about that year in Moorestown as the freshman coach. I'm sorry about that, that I forgot that. JC, you've had to, and you get to, I guess, might be another way to put this too. You're competing in a bucket, right? Everybody has these different buckets of lacrosse that we're competing in, and ultimately, we come together at certain points, and having to compete in a bucket against some other non-public schools with very, very rich lacrosse traditions. from other geographic parts of the state. How daunting a task has it been to create a culture and to build a roster that is able to, at this point, stand toe-to-toe with any public or private that I think people want to put out there, as evidenced as we record this on April 22nd. You come off a victory last night over the team that I think was the most current number one ranked public school in America in Garden City. How have you been able to do that, and how challenging has it been along the way?
Great question. The buy-in has been amazing since I first landed in Richland in '04. We only had a handful of guys that could play, but as more kids started to explore the sport, as Don and Damon mentioned, and we got a few guys that we knew we could start to really compete a little bit more with, our schedule branched out into that next layer of competition. We would play a Moorestown, a Shawnee, who were excellent at that point, and eventually marry that with a Penn charter. And from there, it grew. The culture part of it is something that we've been able to sustain. We certainly know it doesn't live in a vacuum. Every year is so different. It is really hard to kind of turn around and look at your team every year and build a schedule. We're fortunate to be independent, but we're also at a challenge sometimes with that. We'll be back up at Rutgers tonight, second night in a row, 7:00, because we're a little bit at the mercy of playing teams when they're available, since we're not in a conference. So I think our guys wear that like a badge of honor. I think that's where a lot of the tradition comes from. And when you have that and everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction, you've got this immense amount of belief in what we can do. And I think the boys work hard. I mean, they're in it for each other. And I know a lot of coaches can say about their teams, but they do believe every night they hit the floor that they can, compete with some pretty high level talent. And we also know that there's teams out there that are hungry to take us down as well. So it's something, like I said, our guys really believe in buy-in, our school's behind it. We have a lot of support there. So we've been fortunate enough to have good kids and good families, and that work hard and allow us to fuel this kind of path that we're on, and looking to keep it going.
Coach Legato, I think from the outside looking in, this is a perspective that I've had on your teams wherever you've been, whether it's been at Moorestown or at Haddonfield, is that your program, you knew what to expect going in as an official. And one of the questions that I had when you first transitioned over was, man, I'm real interested to see how this goes. And pretty instantaneously, the answer was the same, that there is like a floor to what we're going to have here in terms of how we act, how we play, and the sophistication level. And you've been able to do it at two public schools, where essentially, you weren't building a program from the ground up at Moorestown, but you took an established program and then you had a great deal of success. But you started in a different place, I think, at Haddonfield from a lacrosse and a lacrosse culture perspective, and yet, in my opinion, instantaneously elevated the floor there. How are you able to do that in a public school program where there was not a quote unquote rich tradition previous?
I think that each of us, it's interesting. When I was just thinking about each of us, we have a different animal, and JC is in St. Augustine with private, and they can recruit. Don's at Shawnee, which is a huge school, great sports, great athletics, numbers. And then we're sort of like, we're competitive. Haddonfield's competitive in a lot of sports, but we're small. I mean, we carry usually tops 40 kids every year for the whole program. So I think we deal with different things, but at the base of it all is culture. And I think that it's one of the most important things you could have as a coach and as a program is a good culture. And like JC said, the guys working hard for each other, taking pride in what they're doing, wearing badges. And I know Shawnee is the same way, where they work as a team and they work very hard for each other. It's just a little, I'm sure each of us does it a little bit differently. But like I said, at the core of everything, I think that, you start with effort, attitude, and toughness, mental and physical, but it's all got to be, from my perspective, about growth. And one of the most important aspects of growth that I look at is the growth as a person. How did this player come to us in freshman year, and how we contributed to their success as people over the years, because life lessons are awesome, and they're so easily taught through sports, which is one of my favorite aspects of coaching. So to find kids that leave our program and come back and say, hey, this helped in this way, or they say sayings that we say on our team and repeat them 5 years later, or send texts after wins, with quotes that they had from when they played. I think that culture is what drives success at all of our levels, whether, whatever coach you're looking at here on the board. So one of the major things we really try to do is just help our guys grow, player first mentality, and we want them to be better people when they leave.
There's incremental growth happening in unmeasurable ways as, a geographic area builds itself up, as South Jersey has done. And one of the ways I would argue that is accomplished is by a team goes and plays a team, right? JC, you referenced it about, you've been able to expand your schedule a little bit here and there, and, it grew to Penn Charter and then these other places. And then, kind of like the level of play that your kids saw that said, okay, this is now where we strive to be. This is what the expectation is going to be. And then you go and play a public from South Jersey, and then they say, oh, look, that's St. Augustine. This is who we want to strive to be and play. And Coach Green, I think one of the things that I've always respected about the way you've approached coaching a public school program is, you and Damon are both dealing with the realities that come with existing in a public school situation of, do we have a bus? Can we get to a place? Who are we going to play? Can we get them to come to us? And you've managed through the years to build a schedule, and this year is no different, where you have no fear of getting on a bus and going a long way to play a team. And you just went on a road trip to New York for a couple of games early on in the season. Talk about that a little bit in terms of your philosophy of schedule building. Take us through how your trip was to New York this year, and just kind of like that overall state of affairs.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I've noticed. The first thing with the South Jersey team, in Shawnee, is that when we would go and scrimmage Westfield or anybody like that, those kids had so many more quality hours of lacrosse in them, because I coached, through club, a lot of kids from Westfield, North Jersey, South Jersey. But when you talk about youth lacrosse and things along those lines, their youth lacrosse matchups are against Mountain Lakes and, the other traditional programs up in that area. So those kids just had more great lacrosse under their belts. They might not be better players, a lot of times they are, but they were just more knowledgeable and had more hours of great lacrosse under their belt. We needed to branch out and play more good teams and up our strength of schedule. That was one of the more important things to me, in the sense that we needed to be able to compete every single day. Even at Montgomery, I learned that, as we traveled up to Ridgewood for semifinals, our kids were intimidated that entire bus ride. They're like, oh my God, we're going to play Ridgewood. I'm like, hey guys, you're Montgomery. Like, you're a top 10 team in the state. Like, why are you nervous about this? So from then on, I basically was like, we are going to drive farther and always play somebody better than we may play at the end of the year. So that last game is just like any game that we've played in the schedule. And, again, raising that strength of schedule, creating experiences for our kids, but also, they need to have that big game experience and learn from teams who play zone, who play fast, who play slow, who have a great face-off guy, who may have a 5-star recruit. Like if we can create all those experiences and put all those experiences under our belt, whatever we run into in the playoffs, we've probably seen it before and have an adjustment for it, and the kids are ready for it. So that was my thought process in building out the schedule. The trip to New York this year was I always wanted to take a trip and do something along those lines. And Coach Hirsch from Somers was a college and high school teammate of mine. So we were going to connect, try to play a game at West Point, get another team to come up there. And I was reaching out to Garden City, and that just didn't align. And with everything that's going on in the world, West Point wasn't a viable location to play. So we just were like, hey, we'll go to Somers, we'll play there. And I was like, hey, Ridgefield's only 25 minutes away. Do you have their number? And he's like, yep. So we picked Somers, New York State champion, Ridgefield, who last year was the second best team in Connecticut. They have another Colsey there, who's a phenomenal player. So I was like, that's a great opportunity. So, it was a great bonding experience and opportunity, and we got to play two very good out-of-state games. Um, and yeah, we were excited from the learning that we were able to get out of that trip.
So now, for all of you, as because I want to be respectful of your time, and I appreciate the heck out of you guys spending the day, doing this with me. As you guys look forward and you put the time machine capsule on here, what has to happen here because I think that notion that we haven't had a TO Sierra Curse Cup champion come out of a latitude below Raritan in a quarter century, to elevate that floor to truly an elite level, what has to happen in each of your minds here in order to make that a reality? Damon, why don't you go first?
That's a great question. I think that, again, different things need to happen. But if you're talking for Haddonfield and the area, I agree with Don. I mean, the amount of coaching that the youth receives in South Jersey is limited at times. So, what he talked about where, the youth in the North are playing programs with coaches that are, teaching the game really well at a high level. I think that's, with any public school, that's a really good thing to have in your feeder program. When you have coaches that are, either alumni or are running your system, it elevates the level of play. But overall, I think more competitive play at the youth level helps. I think that Don and do where they go out and they play higher levels of competition. And just seeing what's out there, I think that helps a lot as well. But a lot of it, I think, comes from the youth.
JC?
Yeah, I think we're all probably going to say around the same space with that answer. It's we've seen an immense amount of growth in South Jersey just in some of the young men who have come back, who have become fathers and devoted time, and you could tell the difference in those guys. They don't have to be rewired in a lot of areas. They just have to be shown the way and that next phase and that next step of development. Whereas some guys in some areas might come in and they might be successful players transactionally with regard to maybe goals, assists, saves, face-offs, whatever it might be. But they still have a long way to go in the IQ space. And for us to kind of really grow as high school programs, you'd love to get them with a little bit more of a foundation. And that goes for the girls' side as well. You're talking about people that are really invested at the youngest ages at drawing excitement and more popularity to people playing the sport, because there's a lot of holes on their time, whether it's sports or other activities. Those people who really drive things for us are the ones that in those early ages make it fun, engaging, and then from that kind of grow into well-rounded young players who become, like Damon said so well prior to that, well-rounded young men that you can really work with and help build from there.
Don?
Yeah, I think really the answer is more good teams, more good programs, more good coaches. We will make each other better is really the answer. Is if we're growing up, our kids are growing up at the youth level, and every game's a good game, a competitive game, they're going to learn more about lacrosse. if you're in North Jersey and your schedule is, oh, we have Westfield, Summit, Mountain Lakes, those kids are going through the grinder and the ringer, and they're getting so much better just by playing that level of competition and seeing what those teams do to be successful. So, down here, it's few and far between right now, and there are some stronger programs, but the more good programs we can make, the more, competition we have close to home, the better every program's going to be. And I think that's why all of us secretly, well, and I'm outwardly rooting for the Kingsways of the world, these emerging South Jersey programs who are joining the stage and becoming really good. That helps everybody, right? To have another great game that we can schedule that's not far away, and our kids from first grade through eighth grade can play those guys and get better. Those are the things that are going to make South Jersey better.
Awesome. Anything, just as before we wrapped up, anything that I didn't touch on that and it has been burning a hole in your brains as we've been talking in any direction?
Not really.
No? All right.
I think you did a great job, Keith. It's nice to be part of this.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. Listen, the pleasure was certainly all mine, and hopefully everybody listening to this or watching it on YouTube gets to benefit from just having listened to you guys a little bit. And as you are certainly three of the most prominent architects of successful lacrosse in South Jersey. So this will do it for another overtime episode here on the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast. Please make sure you stay up to date with all the results from St. Augustine, Haddonfield, Shawnee, and all throughout the state as we head into the meat of April. Thanks for watching.